Are you Okay, well, welcome to Black History Conversations. Okay, we're getting well into the summer of 2024 here in the UK, and we can tell because it's pouring with rain outside and it's not. I'm here with my good colleague, Natalie Fagan-Brown. I'm delighted. We're joined by Garrick Preog, who's up in the Wirral. Our special guest for today, Marcella Daye, and she's here joining us from Northampton, and we'll be introducing you properly in a minute, Marcella, or maybe you'll be introducing yourself. We've got Simon Faringo, who's operating the techie things and switching the recording on. So Simon, have you put me in as host as well as I think Marcella needs to be to share her PowerPoint.
Yes, I can see that. I'll be able to share. I can see. Yeah.
Garrick's okay as well. That's lovely. Okay, and we've got Joan Grant joining us from, you did tell me just now, Joan, and I've forgotten already, down in London. Okay, that's wonderful. So we're in the West Midlands, Garrick's up north, you're over towards the east side of England, Marcella in Northampton, north of London, and Joan's down in London. Simon's up in near, I think, Derby, near Nottingham. So he's around and about. So I'm just going to put the PowerPoint up if I can find the right one. I think I've got the right one. That's lovely. Let me just share my screen. This is a great improvement on last week, folks, those of you who joined last week, because I'm actually able to operate my new laptop. June Elizabeth's joining us just in time as well, so that's really lovely. So here was our flyer for today, which tells us about what we're click OK, what we're up to today. So we're
funny, cuddly, but how do you know what they need? Meet Max and Juniper.
No idea what's going on. I think that's disappeared, has it now? Good. Right, okay then. So Marcella, we're delighted to welcome you from the University of Northampton, and you're going to share with us your work. Is this right, or have we changed our direction?
Well, yeah, it's about the same. Yeah.
That's really lovely. So we'll get started with that in a moment. And then we're squeezing in at the end of the session at about 4 o'clock in the UK that we've got a consultation. It's the Mayor of London's consultation with Lamesha Ruddock leading that part of the session on 6 shortlisted memorials to the victims of transatlantic slavery. So you'll be able to share your views on which memorial you'd like to see in London. So I think that'll be really fascinating. Okay, so can't move this on. Let's click the next one. Okay, we start Black History Conversations by recognising that we acknowledge the injustice of the actions taken by the British and other European countries that invaded and took possession of the islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, we also recognise the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Asia and Australia, and the many other parts of the world during the centuries of colonialisation and ongoing exploitation to this day. We acknowledge that this resulted in the destruction and destabilisation of so many nations, peoples and cultures. And we've got, we're going to be focusing in our season 13, starting in September, to find out what's been going on during the International Decade for People of African Descent. Now, I can't remember what the next slide is, so it's a surprise for me as well as it is for you. Okay, just a reminder that last week, the fantastic session with Daniel Johnson. He just was magnificent. So if you haven't had a chance, well, you won't have had a chance because I don't think I've posted it yet on the Black History Conversations website, but that was just fascinating. So I'm going to stop that session there and just share a few little bits and pieces. Welcome, June Elizabeth. It's delightful to have you with us. Thank you very much for organising this and negotiating with Marcella to have her visit us. And you've disappeared now. Don't know where you've gone. Come back again. Okay, then. So just a few things to catch up on. One is to record that we're sending our condolences to our good colleague, Dr. Vivian Crawford from Jamaica. Vivian retired last year as the executive director of the Institute of Jamaica, and very sadly, he's just recently lost his son, who is based here in the UK. So real true condolences, and we've passed that message on to him. So that's he would have been with us otherwise, I'm sure. He was a regular contributor in helping us to record conversations that can be shared with many other people. The other thing I was going to share was that coming back from Australia, I'd not seen Three Little Birds. It's not come on Australian TV yet, so I've watched episode 1 and 3/4 of episode 2, and gosh, it's hard hitting for me to see that, but seems very realistic to me. So I don't know if anybody's got any comments about that. Yeah, okay, we'll go into that conversation again. So, Marcella, without any further ado, thank you so much for coming and joining us again. Last time you spoke to us, you were partway through your research, which is now, as you say, going through peer review, and that was about the experiences that, if we say Black British people, experienced in going on holidays, visiting cultural events and activities over here. And that was fascinating to hear, absolutely fascinating. But that's going through peer review. So today you're going to be sharing with us more about the work you're doing at the moment. And we're really, really grateful, Marcella. So we're looking forward to a really super interesting session. Thank you very much indeed. Over to you.
Okay.
Oh, that's brilliant.
Okay.
Oh,
Are you seeing it now?
yes, I'm seeing it fine.
Okay.
Yeah.
Just a little word of caution that I'm having issues. From time to time, I see a message pop up saying your internet is unstable. So if you see me freeze somewhere or the other, it's because that's just a thing. So I'm going to go a bit quick because I don't know when it will act up. So my apologies before.
No trouble at all. That's
Yeah.
lovely. Thank you for giving us that heads up.
Sure. Thank you very much. And again, may I express my heartfelt appreciation and thanks to the Caribbean Conversations, Black History Conversations. Thanks to June Elizabeth for introducing me to this group. And also thank you, Liz, for having me not once but twice. Oh my God, what can I say about that? I am
Right.
deeply overwhelmed because you can get one invitation, but we get another one. It seems as if, you're getting into a point where it's not just friends, you become family, I think.
Thank you so much.
Okay. Just to kind of say that, yes, I may repeat one or two slides from the last time, just to kind of reinforce the context of my presentation today, and to also say for individuals like June Elizabeth, this may seem as though I'm singing the same chorus again, but some other new insights I'm hoping to share with you about this. So, the regular Cliff Richard song, we are going on a summer holiday. And that, of course, fired the public, I think, imagination or public desire at the time when it came out late 50s, early 60s. It had to do with the imaginary of the mass tourism experience. Now, that didn't just happen in the UK generally, because it was more an articulation of the white majority working classes having the income, the means now to go on holidays, not only the seaside towns in the UK, but also overseas. And one of the main features of that period was that it was something they had to fight for. There had to be changes in legislation in terms of the Holiday with Pay Act. labor law, well, the contribution of the trade unions as well in regulating labor laws to allow people to go on holiday with pay and making that be part of the kind of norm, normalizing it in terms of the working class experience. Another point in kind had to do with the issues of the access that everyday British people had to open spaces, because there were in place many laws still that restricted the movement of people into going into outdoor locations. But with the rise of what we call the British working class, as articulated by some historians, this fight for the working class to gain more access to travel, to get the benefits of outdoor leisure and tourism, didn't necessarily extend to ethnic minoritized groups of peoples as well. And so this is perhaps what I'm tracing. And I liked that rendition you gave, Liz, when you said tracing the lives of Black lives in leisure, because it allowed me in some respect to kind of search, as I had done before, to see where in the archives I could find images, stories of people of color, Black people, Asian people in outdoor settings. My search, however, wasn't necessarily very successful. And what you're seeing here is what I found online, which mainly related to the America. So here we see in this is pictures taken in the 1950s of Black communities foregrounded. You see whites in the background, but Blacks are here foregrounded, meaning that was the object of the photographer's vision. Where they're at the Kentucky Derby, as you can see there, Kentucky Derby. But the reality is that it was a fractious period of history in the USA that was still overshadowed by Jim Crow segregation laws, and where Blacks were not allowed to mix in social spaces with the white majority population. So I know I'm in the USA, but it's for a reason. But we see Afro-Americans with some level of apparent affluence who were able to attend the Sport of Kings. But if we look at the pictures, we can see that they are apparently at ease and enjoying the event. But further research shows that the simple fact that African-American jockeys were forced out of American racing by the end of the 19th century, despite their stellar record in performing and winning these races. A 2020 paper on Jim Crow in the Saddle, the expulsion of African-American jockeys from American races, noted that at the first running of the Kentucky Derby in 1875, 13 of the 15 jockeys were African-Americans. This was a legacy of slavery when most jockeys on Southern tracks were African-American. Gradually in the decades that followed, more and more white jockeys entered the field. Black jockeys continued to ride on local tracks in the 1880s and 1890s, and often they dominated the winner's circles. So Blacks gained the rights to attend races on equal footing with whites in the 1880s after professional sportsmen assumed control. But by the beginning of the 20th century, racial inclusion at the track was over with the extension of Jim Crow laws into sports and leisure. I guess we all have a different appreciation of this photo when observing it through the lens of this historical context. And here's another image I found of Black people, Blacks in leisure in America. We see people of color enjoying themselves, smiling, with no apparent barriers to leisure and recreation, until we hear the story of where they were at Chicken Bone Beach. It was located on a long stretch of the Atlantic City, New Jersey. Shoreline just south of downtown, Chicken Bone Beach was designated as the exclusively African American section of the beach. And this was in the 1950s. It remained a Black-only beach until 1964 Civil Rights Act was passed. During the segregation era, the beach provided recreation and later entertainment for African Americans, both tourists and local residents. Before the 1900s, however, Blacks and whites in Atlantic City lived side by side, and African Americans used the beaches without restriction. But then after that, hotel owners pushed back beachgoers from the fronts of their establishments. And this move was done to appease the growing number of hotel guests who were coming from the south up north into the north of America, who didn't want to see Black people on the beach. Are you still here? Am I still here? Are you still hearing me? Just checking in.
Yes, we are.
Oh,
Yes,
good.
this is just fascinating. Thank you so much, Marcella. Thank you.
Okay, just a couple more images of Blacks, you know, the history of in America. In the deep south of Florida now, we're going to Paradise Park, again in the 50s, was a theme park for African Americans established in 1949. The park was located on the south side of the Silver River, about half a mile from Silver Springs. Because of segregation, African Americans were barred from Silver Springs. But at Paradise Park, guests could only enjoy similar attractions such as glass-bottom boat rides and river cruises. Here was a clear demarcation of spaces of leisure for people of color. Even Paradise couldn't elude the panopticon or the prison of segregation. And here another more perhaps disturbing image, just to illustrate the view that segregation in essence was the policing of Black bodies. Here, leisure outdoors as well-being was afforded to the Black bodies, the Black population, within a setting of being corralled put behind these restrictions, to imprison and to control movement and their spatial access, even at a so-called Paradise Park in southern Florida. Now you may be saying, why all of this? Well, this is very important because we see where in situations where you have the Black minority in a white majority population, even spaces of leisure are subscribed as to where people of color should go and not go. So let's look. Have you heard of this, the Black Book? Yeah? Became part of a popular movie in recent times. This Black Book, which are known as the Green Book, was published as a guide to kind of help African Americans as to where to go and where not to go, should they decide to travel, and which holiday spaces they would like to go. So the Black community therefore had to adjust and assume travel behavior in relation to, and may I dare use the phrase, the hostile environment that they encountered in the peak years of segregation. Even after the civil rights legislations of the 1960s, these restrictions still persisted across the American landscape and define the whole issue of what it means for Black travel or Black leisure in America. Now, you see those words that have come up there, and you may say, in the UK, we don't have this legacy of slavery in the UK mainland in the same way as it was in America. So you would say that it's not the same. However, definitely may not be the same. But however, there are some issues. When I began this particular research, and even within the context of archives, I've not yet been able to locate an archive or a body of representation of Black communities in the UK in leisure settings. It is almost invisible. When I did the research about what are the special considerations or how is it we should market to ethnic minority communities, or understanding what are these cultural references in terms of how we travel, the information, whenever it came up, was always saying this research, ethnic minorities are seen as insignificant in terms of their impact in the travel market. They're seen as undervalued, underrated, ignored, and often unheard. So the question is, how does that play out today? Latest data, none has been done since 2018, shows the great disparity. 54.714 million white British people go on domestic tourist holidays in the UK compared to only 2.844 million. Latest census, I think, puts us at around ethnic minorities as around 18% of the overall population, but that still accounts to only 0.1% of us as people of color ever go on holidays in the UK. So we're definitely still remaining underrepresented. But this gives perhaps a clearer picture, because we see that, yes, there is to do with white British, but then when we get a full breakdown, we see as well that how these groups are also underrepresented in terms of different ethnic groups within our communities. So what is a sort of theoretical ways in which we can account or explain? What does research tell us as to why people of color are underrepresented in research? Well, first of all, there is what is known as the marginality theory, which says that we just don't have enough money. We don't have the socioeconomic power and such the like to be able to go on travel. We are restricted because of barriers in relation to cost, transportation. We don't have the information and spatial barriers. So this has traditionally, up to 2014, been used to account, to explain the reason for ethnic minority underrepresentation in travel and tourism. And then there is the other notion of the ethnicity or subcultural values theory. Now, this is more so a deficit approach, which says certain cultures just don't know how to behave in the outdoors, how to operate or to function in green spaces on the countrysides, that as certain cultural groups don't have the outdoor skills, they don't have the social capital to fully appreciate and to act according to the mores or behaviors that are more suitable for outdoor green spaces. So we're struggling with some of these theories because we can see their limitations, particularly the marginality theory, when we see that people of color are not only traveling more overseas, they're spending more when they go on holidays overseas. And that we're seeing shifts in income with people from India, Africa, and the Caribbean. They're traveling abroad and they're staying in hotels and they're going on package tours across the world, but they're not in their numbers really represented here as much in the UK. Another theory that tries to account for this problem is that of discrimination theory. In other words, overt racism, which hinders people of color from going to experiences here in the UK. The notion that people of color don't belong here in the UK. And that's translated in terms of the lack of provision of services that are suited to their needs. For example, halal food. But we see where there sometimes is accommodation made for, let's say, the inbound Chinese market, because there's a perception that they spend a lot and they spend and buying high luxury goods. So across in the UK and Europe, there's a lot of emphasis on attracting overseas Chinese communities to visit countries in Europe. And adjustments are made for their tastes. So the question is that why is it that you're able and willing to make accommodation for the inbound, let's say, that means Chinese coming from China to visit the UK, but there isn't that same will or appreciation of the power of the Black pound. So let's get a little dive into some of these barriers. What are some of the expressions used by so many of our communities or ethnic minoritized communities as to why there is a barrier to going to the UK? Of course, there's still the notion of socioeconomic factors, but it's more in terms of, we can link that more in terms of value for money. It's not that we're not spending, it's just that we're not thinking that a holiday in the UK represents value for money compared to other destinations overseas. So if we're going to spend our money, we're going to take it to go to somewhere warm, somewhere where we can get the food we like. Then there's this notion that groups of us say definitely will not travel to the UK because there's no guarantee that we're going to get good weather. And we see that even here in the summer. So of course, there's stereotypes about what ethnic minorities do and don't do in terms of travel. And of course, we found a major barrier being, why am I going to go around and about in the UK? Because there's a risk of racism. Now, I want to be clear that these views are not necessarily homogeneous. Not everybody in ethnic minority groups share the same views. There are different types of responses or different approaches that people have. And as I was saying to Liz earlier, I am currently putting through peer review a paper that focuses on the different psychographic types that we have among ethnic minorities in terms of our travel behavior. So that's one important thing to note, that for everybody, it's not necessarily that traveling or taking holiday in the UK is a restriction. People have different mindsets, different what we call psychographic approach thinking that determines the extent to which they'll go on a holiday in the UK or not. But what I found in my research is somehow or the other, regardless of those who are willing to go out anytime they wish to go on holiday, and for those who will definitely not go for a holiday in the UK, one of the main underlying factors was the notion of the risk of racism. Whether for some, they don't care. It's not a problem. For them, the risk is not such an issue that will restrict them, but they're still aware of it. But they make the decision, it's not going to limit me. To those who say, why bother? So there's a spectrum of different responses and different approaches. So just wanted to highlight that in terms of how, as a community, there are different types and different responses to how we look at that. So of course, there's socioeconomic barriers. This quote is definitely saying, growing up, a middle-aged African Caribbean female said, growing up, white people went on holidays and we stayed at home. But if we were going to go on a holiday, we were going to go to the Caribbean, and that was it. So that was her experience of holidaying. It just didn't happen in the UK. And then for others, it was spaces in the UK, which even, included across not just England, you're talking about Wales and also Scotland, there was this perception, whether it's so or not, was that they were unwelcoming. And that for them, the thing is, it became even worse after Brexit. And so the thinking is, we have to go abroad because we can get away from that. I don't have to worry if I'm going to be well received. But the point to also note, what I'm speaking up from these interviews, is that people wanted to go to spaces and experiences in the UK. As this person said, I want to go to Scotland. I want to go to Ireland. I watch these shows, travel shows about the UK. I watch Countryfile. I want to go in the outdoors. There's a pent-up demand, but I feel restricted because these spaces seem unwelcoming. And of course, the risk of overt racism. And people, quite a number of participants gave me a lot of examples about what they experienced when they went out and about. Now, it wasn't necessarily unanimous, but for most of my respondents, there was this, almost everybody had a story to tell about how they felt discriminated against. We see it on social media. Of course, the account of Muslim hikers, people went quite a lot of that. If you look online and you follow the accounts of groups such as Muslim hikers, Black in Nature, Black Outdoors, those kinds of accounts where people of color come together and galvanize themselves to go outdoors, you see a lot of these expressions of much hostility, vitriolic, bitter comments about them. And this is just one example of many, how they are being ridiculed, they're being referred to as wildebeest in Serengeti. They just keep coming. We see other examples. Just recently, last year, a family was racially attacked while in part during a picnic. So there are still instances of this happening. We see where the countryside is normally totally imagined as being white. So green is white. So here is a comment: you have taken over our cities. Please leave the countryside alone. And then somebody responded, well, the countryside is free for everybody. What are you going on with? And then here's another one. I walked up Snowdon. There was a group of well over 100 Muslims walking up it. One of them offered me a sweet, but when they got to the top, they unfurled and planted the ISIS flag and stood around it making signs and taking pics. Obviously untrue. But here is the tension that's still occurring in our outdoors. The notion of safe spaces for us in the UK or not is still a question. The formation of groups where we find groups of people of color mobilizing, as I'd mentioned some of them before, Muslim hikers, now Black Girls Hike has gotten quite a bit of notoriety and quite a bit of acclaim for their work in mobilizing women of color to go out overseas. But of course, they also experienced very similar resentment, hostility. The BBC was bombarded with complaints after a feature was done on Black Girls Hike on Countryfile. BBC tried to defend themselves, tried to explain, well, there are different people doing it, different ethnic groups. But what I've noted is that I haven't seen many such different types, because there are many other Black groups and groups of color which I haven't seen being profiled on Countryfile since they got this very negative response about Black Girls Hike. Trisha Goddard came into it. She posted on her Instagram account, what's this thing about stereotyping people? Where did you get it from that Black people don't hike, that Black people don't trail run, Black people don't ice skate, Black people don't ski? Where did you get that from? She said, oops, I didn't get the memo. And here we have another group that says, appreciate it. That's another group, Wanderers of Color. That's another group of people who are also mobilized to deal with this notion of unwelcoming spaces, to deal with the notion of the risk of racism being a factor in influencing the travel behavior or leisure behavior of people of color in the UK. And here I spoke to a couple of these young ladies, the girls who are running this. It's actually a travel agency that they do run, which focuses on taking people of color into to holidays, not only in the UK, but overseas. And they specialize in skiing as well as other kinds of winter sports. But I think one of their hallmarks is that of wearing designer clothes, being quite flamboyant, and emphasizing that, you know, they are on the slopes too. So it's a typology. If, you know, I was mentioning different types. This is part of that type. They don't care. They're not in the least bit intimidated about going into spaces that are traditionally white. And what they do as part of their service is not only to take people on these tours, but they also offer training sessions for people to learn how to ski and so on. So they go to these skiing facilities in Milton Keynes. There are some in Scotland where they say, if we would equip you, we'll give you the know-how. So at least when you go on the slopes with us, you can enjoy yourself as well. So we're seeing then a resistance. We're seeing where people of color are mobilizing in groups. They're having their own travel agencies in a way to kind of defy the notion that they should be restricted from these spaces. So in some respect, it's not only for entertainment, but it's also an act of resistance. And then we're going into spaces where traditionally we're not seen to belong. Talk about Royal Ascot. And so we have here quite a number of different ethnic minorities who are in some respect transgressing the notion of the sport of kings, the affluence, the elitism of the leisure activity of going to horse racing. And so we're seeing examples of this with a young woman saying she attended Ascot. We're seeing where Ascot has turned into a carnival with people in suits and nice dresses, of which they're showing ethnic minoritized people, a group of Indian women in their saris, of Africa, people of Afro-Caribbeans who are there dancing to soca music at Ascot. And of course, it is making itself into culture and lifestyle magazines. We're seeing coverage of this. Here we see a South Asian woman saying, we need this diversity. We need to have some ways in which we represent people of color in outdoor leisures, because she said she found a new lease of life through hiking, through going over in the outdoors into green spaces. And she said it should not be out of reach for minority women. So we see more and more there is this mobilization at the individual level, at the group level, I mentioned first, at the individual level. And what are we seeing? Who is getting on the bandwagon now? The sportswear brands. They're saying they're tackling racism in outdoor leisure now. So here we have North Face coming up with this exciting promotion advertising where they said, if you do our DEI course, we take 20% of any items you buy. But as you see from the headline, it faced a big backlash. You're showing a black man in a North Face branded top. Why should a black man have to do a DEI course? Why are you lumping everybody together? So people of color were saying, should we be the ones having to learn about our own experiences as well? You know, is it a one size kind of approach fits all? So there are some challenges to that. But whilst there are mixed views as to whether North Face was genuine in their attempt to really raise awareness about diversity and the need for it in the outdoors, the second question was, were they co-opting the struggle for their benefit? Were they riding on the back of this sentiment to kind of profile their brand, to suggest how much of values oriented they are? So these are some issues that are still up for debate. But the point is, they're addressing the problem of this disparity and underrepresentation, and perhaps racism in the outdoors that people of color experience. And so they did run the program for quite a while. But as you can see, it shut down. The allyship in the outdoors was their approach to it. It's up to you to think, you know, to come to your own views. I'll never say I'm authority as to whether this is right or it is wrong. The only comment I can make on it is to say that you won't find brands engaging in such a topic simply for the notion of values, simply for the notion of being philanthropic. Even then, even if they are philanthropic, there is the bottom line of what it means in terms of financial gain. Okay, so that's my only comment I'll make on that. So what do we want? How do we see the brave new world of redressing these problems of underrepresentation? How then do we emphasize that there is value in redressing this inequity and disparity for people of color being so underrepresented in the spaces of leisure, tourism, and the outdoors? The issue is to make the invisible visible. That's the value proposition. How does that affect your marketing in terms of representation in our leisure brochures? If you go across the various, what would I say it is, the various websites of the tourist authorities and establishments as well as hotels, hardly any images of people of color are represented. Yeah, that's still a problem. I looked in depth and did extensive research with Visit Britain, who is the official organization overseeing domestic tourism in the UK. There is absolutely nothing about ethnic minority market. However, they have quite a bit of work that they have done in terms of peoples with disability. They have a disability advocate who looks to the interests of peoples with disability to make sure they have access to go on holidays across the UK. I also see where they have training packs for people to prepare, to make accommodation for the LGBTQI market as a distinct group. But there's no recognition, there's no valuing of the ethnic minority market. There's no appreciation or any sort of notion to say it's important to educate, to raise awareness, and have marketing messages that will acknowledge that ethnic minority groups should be rated, should be recognized, and represented in UK domestic tourism. And here is a quote which I end with from one of my participants. And they're talking about how they don't feel as if there's the message being made to them that they aren't part of the marketing communications, or they are not seen or valued as part of the UK domestic tourists. And she said, but I feel that these marketers should increase Black representation in travel industry on multiple levels. It's not just going on holidays and doing what white people do. They must invest in minority groups to enable people to take more holidays. And with that, I rest my case.
Right, well, thank you very much indeed. That was absolutely fascinating again. Thank you. Now we've got a few folks here to join in on the conversations. We've been joined by Jackie Pennant also, who's based down in Florida in the southern states. So Jackie may have some comments. And as you know, we've got others from around the UK. So I don't know who's going to come in first. Jackie, lovely.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I'm going to come on camera just for a second. Sorry, I'm coming from work, so I'm... Okay, so there's a lot of information here. Where do I start? Okay, so question. To what extent are we demanding greater access, greater inclusion? Because one thing to ask others to include, but are we, demanding that as a group?
Thank you, Jackie. That's really a really insightful question. I think the ways in which you could say we are demanding it, it's perhaps evidenced in the way we have, as minority groups, mobilized into our special. So you can look at Muslim walkers, Black Girls Hike, Wanderers of Color. These are some of the ways, and in that kind of medium, they're demanding representation and saying, here we are, we're a group, we have income, we have the interest, we have the time, and we represent a valuable demand for you to invest in us, to attract us. So I think in those ways, we are evidencing our own demands to be part of this, to be included.
Can I just follow up with one more comment?
Sure.
All right, so I grew up in care in England.
Yeah.
So my introduction to the British outdoors, I was introduced through white people, you know.
Yes.
So I think because of that, I have more of a comfort level in going out there, because as a child, I was out there protected, in these spaces. I wasn't out there in a, with my parents.
Yeah.
So that's one thing I want to say as far as having the children out there in these spaces. So it becomes second nature to them. This is, what we do. Other point I wanted to make was that I have multiple experiences of, racism in traveling, all right? Because I travel a lot. But I will say that there are things I would do in England I will not do in the United States.
Yeah.
There's a comfort level I have in England I do not have in the United States. So, I do think it's a gentler space to travel in than, other places. And then last comment is my last trip, I was canal boating, nieces and nephews going through the canals. And along the canal, I couldn't believe what I was seeing. I saw a large Confederate flag on the side. It was, I guess it was someone's backyard, but it was very unwelcoming, And I was just wondering, is this allowed? I didn't know what to do. I didn't do anything about it, but I was wondering if that was allowed, on the British canalways, so people could display things like that. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Jackie. I really don't know about the last question. I can't answer that one because I don't know, but it's something perhaps I could look into. But I do know that from my own interviews that I conducted, there were some people who felt that there were certain pubs in the UK where they had the St. George flag that that was just a sign, don't go there. So I think in that sense, there may be a bit of a parallel. And of course, the level, I think, of overt racism that's likely or tends to happen in the US is definitely not as, I think, overt as you'll experience in the UK. And I think by contrast, UK may seem to be less hostile, but I don't think that totally perhaps is the case that there is no such experience of racism. For most of my respondents, which were well over 55 or so of mixed race, there were people of African origin, Chinese, Asians, and even white other, meaning Arabic people who were involved in this research. And they too also could have cases and spoke about the racism they felt when they went into these leisure spaces as well. So I think definitely there are different levels of experience. I think there are some places, I think there are some people who say, okay, but I went even to the Caribbean and felt that I was discriminated against as a Black person compared to a white person in hotels. And that has been a long kind of standing charge that some people of color have used even in spaces where you felt it would be more welcoming to people of color. So it's not that will say that the UK is a worst case in point. I wouldn't say that. But the reality, however, exists that there are a lot of people who just don't feel as though the UK represents a space in which they can freely go into the outdoors and place where they would say is a place to enjoy leisure. Thank you.
Shall I
Thank you.
first or you go?
Garrick first.
Garrick first. Okay, thanks, Garrick.
Very interesting and informative presentation, Marcella. There's a couple of points I'd just like to raise, because although you're focusing on the experience of people in the UK, you've just touched on a little bit of people going out into their own country and experiencing problem there also.
Yeah.
But let's just stick with the UK.
Yeah.
So in one of your slides, you referred to, marketing and the fact that a lot of these companies do not actually market a welcome for minority people, per se. So it's not there. It doesn't exist. And then you also mentioned the fact that, we're the people with the black pound, so we can choose where to spend our money. And in doing so, you will navigate to find, what would be the better place. It may not be the best place, but it might be better than others, etc. And, so in some way we have some control on things. And if we hear experience of, let's say, going to the Swiss Alps and, the experience has been bad, well, you're not going to be going there because people have told you that the racism there is very bad. So we can navigate ourselves. But here's the thing. In the UK, we have equality laws and we should use them, right? And it's about these companies, I would immediately say to them, where is your equality, inclusion, diversity policy? Challenge them straight away, challenge them, because you have authority to challenge them and, to see what are they doing about this. And that could be a good starting point, just try and break down some of these barriers. And also, if nobody challenges them, they'll just continue doing what they do and don't think inclusion is of any importance. So we have a right to do so, and we can use the appropriate legislation. The Equality and Human Rights is there to be used. Let's use it, apart from other discrimination, employment, etc., etc. But the fact of the matter is, it's no point people having that experience and do nothing about it, because there's things we can do about that experience.
Yeah, I agree with you, Garrick. And I think periodically, when I did the desk research, I saw where there were articles that came up where, let's take, for instance, in an article in the Times, the Visit Britain was challenged by a journalist saying, why do we keep on whitewashing British history in our attractions or historical attractions? And he was saying, we need to reference other people groups who are also part of British history. And the response from Visit Britain, the head of Visit Britain, was, yes, we recognize this is something we're working on, and we're looking for ways and means to do that. Because as you know, Garrick, living in this country, there is a whole lot of controversy and warfare around national trust and their representation of any Black history in these colonial houses. You could see from one of the title of the book, Green Unpleasant Land by Corinne Fowler, she has come under even personal attack, threats, death threats, because she dared to look into the archives and find evidence of Black history in these spaces. So companies like Visit Britain, yes, they can be challenged, but sometimes they have to even get their own house in order first. You know where I'm going?
Yeah.
Because they look at their practices and what do they have in their institution. They have to get that first before they start tell the other people, do this, be more equitable. So that's where it's at. And I've been in discussions with them. It's not, I mean, I got the information to them. They're aware of my work. But at the time they were saying the same thing. Give us a little while. We have to get past the pandemic and get our numbers up. Then we will have a look at this. So yeah, I agree with you.
But the thing is, Marcella, they couldn't take that response to a tribunal because that response would not be accepted because, you know, you're not doing anything about it. It's not saying, oh, you know, we're going to be doing something down the road, you know, 3-4 years down the road. The fact is, you know, where's your policy? You know, what are you doing now? So you're already showing that you're not doing anything.
Yes, I agree with you. But hopefully with political landscape changing, we're hearing Lisa Nandy, who's recently been appointed, saying, well, I'm not going to tolerate, you know, it's not about culture wars. Everybody must be represented. She's holding up the flag for diversity and equality. So let's see if that translates in real action.
Thank you, Garrett, very much indeed. Now, after your last talk, Marcella, I spoke at length and shared the recording with my colleague here, also one of the directors of Learning Links International, Natalie Fagan-Brown. So over to you, Natalie.
Well, it was a brilliant presentation.
Thank you, Natalie. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it because for me, it's quite personal because in 2011, I became medically unable to fly.
Whoa.
And so was forced to start taking holidays within the UK.
Yes.
And suddenly I realized how beautiful the country is.
Yes.
Because before, you know, the weather is one thing. It's down to choice. It's down to choice and it's down to ease of choice.
Yes.
Because you have money to go on a holiday, first thing, because if you don't have money, holidays are the least of your worries. But if you have money to go on a holiday, you're not going to choose the UK as your first option when you're going to have sunlight somewhere else, maybe all inclusive. I also became aware of the fact that holidays within the UK cost more than holidays overseas.
Definitely.
Significantly more.
Yeah.
I also realized too that on going to places, I find that we're the only Black family and I'm just seeking out Black faces. It becomes, we have a game. We actually have a family game of spotting who spots the first Black person.
And you are not the only Black family. I heard that repeatedly in my interviews. Spot the Black person.
Must look for the massive smile and their face lights up with the tears too, because they're not the only ones there.
Yes.
But I've realized also too that sometimes the only way we can change things is being the ones to be the disruptors. And I've realized that the places I felt most unwelcome, I have revisited. We went to a museum of toys in Shropshire. And there was a gollywog.
Gollywog, yeah.
That's one of the toys. But it did nothing. It was just a delightful toy from this time period. Nothing about the racist connotations, nothing about where they came from. I spoke to the person and at the desk and she sort of did so I wrote a letter. And then I revisited. When I went, I wrote a letter saying that I don't mind it being there. What I wanted is to say that to certain members of the community, this is not acceptable because, but when we went back, it had been removed totally. So rather than putting just a little bit, a paragraph underneath to say, okay, this is the reason why it might not be acceptable to certain people, even though, yes, it's a toy from that time period. We understand that, we respect that, because I'm not about erasing history.
No,
It
I
is what
agree
it
with
is.
you. I agree with you.
But that small paragraph, they didn't bother. They just removed it totally. But I thought, okay, it's up to you. I don't mind if you erase your own history. Well, I don't have to be offended by it. And I realized that the more you ask, the more you insist. We were asked as a family in Winchester to leave a cafe because there was a party of tourists coming in.
And did you leave?
No, anybody who knew me should have told them that that was the wrong person to ask.
Oh, well, I was going to say, if you did leave, I would come down there immediately and take you back there.
My grandfather's taught me that I need to take up space. Wherever I go and feel I'm not wanted, take up space. You know, it's a Jamaicanism where he says, spread out your frack tail, make it as large as possible, and take up space. And that's it. And I said, sorry, I am a tourist. I am not from Winchester. And I'm not leaving. And I said, I want to see you try.
Yeah, that's exactly it.
Which at one point my daughter said to me, Mommy, I don't think we need to order any food because I
yes, they'll put something in it.
I wasn't going to order. I wasn't going to give them my money either. The way they think, I wasn't giving them my money. But I sat in that place forever. The group of Chinese tourists came, and we had great time chatting with them.
Yep.
And then I left.
Well, I did make that point that about how they'll accommodate. You know, I think I made that point. Yeah.
Yes, it's just listening to the reasons why we don't access it. There is going to be racism, but I feel that people are afraid of what they do not know, and they cannot know unless they are made to see.
Yeah, and you represent a type.
So I'm going to keep turning up.
Yeah, and you are not atypical in that sense, because I did meet people who said, I don't care what they want to say, but I am going there, you know, and I've given them a name as well in terms of the different types, and that's a very important strategy for marketing, where we see people have different psychographics, we call it, different attitudes that plays itself out in terms of our travel behavior as well, or what we choose to do in terms when we go out and encounter such kinds of experiences. So you're not atypical. The question is, how then do we translate this into wider awareness?
Empowered. Not everybody feels empowered enough to have to deal with
exactly. That's the word.
But shouldn't be.
Yeah.
But those that do should. There's always going to be people who pave the way. You know, the organizations that that are going out there hiking. And every time my family has gone out hiking, they come back with great stories about, oh, you know, we met this white couple, or we met this so-and-so couple, and we had a chat and so on, and they've invited us to so-and-so, because sometimes a lot of things are our perceptions, and sometimes they are real and present danger. But as you know, Jackie said, what I do here and the way I'd explore the countryside here, I wouldn't do so in America. I wouldn't do so on my own or even with company in America. Because I have perceived notions about traveling in the countryside in America. And I guess that's the same perceived notion some people have about traveling within the UK. But, you know, it's becoming better. Like, I'm seeing more and more people, even in the short time between 2011 and now, I'm going to places and seeing more Black and, you know, the other ethnic minorities who are accessing these places a lot more, you know. more. We had a discussion the other day with National Trust, and they're saying that their intake of Black and ethnic minorities who are becoming members have increased. So that's a positive for me.
Yes, I agree.
Well, I have to say that butting in here at the end of Natalie's talk, after being so inspired, Marcella, by your last presentation, I suggested that Natalie and her family, they haven't done it yet, I suggested they started writing a series called, now bear in mind Natalie's name is Natalie Fagan Brown, and the name of the series was Join the Browns on Holiday in ... Wales. This year she's going to do Join the Browns on Holiday in Ireland. Braver than I am, I tell you. So
we chose Ireland because we know at the moment there's quite a bit about Blacks in Ireland going on. There's a little bit of unrest going on where that's concerned about Black people identifying as Irish, and and we chose to go because we have not gone to Ireland, and thought, okay, it'd be interesting to go and see how that is for myself.
I'll join you.
we look forward to the series. Now, talking
Yep.
about Wales, I think one thing, and just before I say that, welcome, Lametta. I'm really delighted, Lamisha, really delighted you've joined us, and we're going to be moving on to the next part of our session in a moment or two. And Whitney, greetings to you, to Black History Conversations, where in a moment we're going to change the subject and talk about the consultation on memorials in London. But just to perhaps wrap this up, unless there are any other comments, one of the stories I've heard, which is fascinating, is that down in South Wales, there's quite a Black population down there. And one of the stories that my friend Hilary Brown was telling me about, another of the Brown family, and that is that bus coaches used to go from the West Midlands to Barry, and Barry Island was a really popular tourist resort for groups of people from the Black community. And so maybe we can do a little bit of research on that to help and see how come that finished, that sort of idea of the bus tour. I suppose when we all got cars, but then it didn't make it as easy to organise things together. Now, just before we go on, is there anybody else who wants to make a comment? I can see we've got June Elizabeth with us.
Yeah, thank you. Good afternoon. I just want to say thank you again to Dr. Marcella Daye, for coming on Black History Conversation again. And I was at the University last week of Northampton, and at the conference where Dr. Daye presented. And I never tire of listening to Dr. Daye, because there's always a different element and twist to her presentation. And I thank you very much. I really, really enjoyed listening to you and the interaction with the members that are on Black History Conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you.
Thank you, June Elizabeth.
I don't know if you want to wrap up. Joan, is there anything you wanted to ask or comment on here? Do you get out and about from London very often to visit around the UK? Perhaps Joan's not there just at the moment. Well, Jackie Pennant, who is an inveterate traveller and adventurer, and posts wonderful records of your travels on Facebook. I really enjoyed that cruise you went on, Jackie. Jackie's going to come over here to the UK, especially to Wales, because Jackie has a really significant last name. Her last name is Pennant. And along with a group of locals from a little community in Jamaica called Pennants, we've created the Pennants Heritage Research Group. And with that group, our organisation, Learning Links International, we're represented here by 3 of our directors and 1 advisor, so that's absolutely wonderful. Learning Links International applied for Welsh Government funding to enable Welsh people to have the opportunity to travel overseas, and for people from our overseas partner to visit us. And guess where we chose? Jamaica. So
Wonderful.
we will be looking at tourism in North Wales. We'll be working with the Welsh Tourist Board because we want to partner them with the Tourism Board in Clarendon, Jamaica, which is where Pennant is, where the Penrhyn Castle family had their plantations mainly. And we're going to be talking about how we welcome people to Wales, and how the Welsh Tourist Board and the Clarendon Tourist Board can work together on ways that they use to engage more people in the tourism industry. Now, this is a request we've had from Rohan Blake, the Chief Executive of the Clarendon Municipal District Council. So this is really serious stuff. So it will be wonderful. So we're going to have visitors come over in the next year or so from Jamaica, and we're going to have some of us from North Wales going over to Jamaica and meeting up with folks. And we extend an invitation to others who want to come, who won't benefit from the funding, we have to say, but they'll benefit by the tour activities, because we want to include colleagues who don't live in Wales or aren't based in Wales at the moment. So yeah, it's really exciting. Anyway, Dr. Marcella Daye, thank you so much. Just brilliant. And if I can say so, not only will you get a second invitation, but you'll get a third, because we want to know about the paper that you've put through that's being peer reviewed, because after that paper's gone through, maybe we'll be able to also access that and read that and understand more about the wonderful work you're doing.
And
So,
just to solicit your support
yes.
for this research, because I'm really looking for archive collections of Blacks, Asians in leisure settings, just like I could get what I showed you from America. I'm looking to see if we can put that together for the UK, because there's a gap. So I'm really asking you to keep your eyes and ears out. Yeah, I know that I would have to dig into existing archives to see what they have, but I'm hoping to see perhaps I can have that's my ideas now, to have more like a people's archives that we ourselves put together, that people who are willing to share their photos, because as you said, there's a lot of Sunday school trips and so on that were done among Black communities that took people, around various areas. So that's what I'm thinking as my next endeavor, my next task at hand, to have those rich memories that we can do some analysis, we can do some discussions, and I'm sure it would be of value for us.
Well, that's a great idea. And Natalie's saying here, yes, all these ideas are going
We
through.
need to meet up, Natalie. I think we need to have our eyeball.
I'm so fascinated with your study. Of course, we have to.
Yes, thank you so
Well,
much.
for any of you who happen to be around tomorrow here in the West Midlands in Wednesbury, Natalie's very kindly holding a garden party for me here, because it's
In this
my
weather.
birthday.
Ah,
Right, so June Elizabeth, I've just opened the card that you sent me, which is so lovely. I'll put it up close.
wow.
Isn't that beautiful? Thank you.
Oh, are you sure it's not the other way around? 57.
Oh, yeah. 27, dear, 27, that's more like. Anyway, that's just so lovely. Well, thank you very much indeed. And that gives us a good lead on, because it's important that we've got things for reasons for travelling, and holidaying is a jolly good reason, but there's also reasons for travelling to see things. And in our next part of our session, we're going to be looking at with Lamisha Lamisha Rogaduk, the interesting ideas that the Mayor of London's come up with, or people have come up with in response to the Mayor of London. Anyway, I think we'll thank you very much indeed,
Dr. Daye.
Dr. Daye, Marcella Daye, thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And we'll welcome formally Lamisha Ruddock. Lamisha did a wonderful project in a suit you, which involved the use of Jamaica's own language, Jamaican, and Natalie here is a language specialist, and me as a interested in all sorts of things person. We got involved, and that was a great project. We did enjoy that last summer being a part of that. But now we're on to something different again, Lamisha, and welcome to all the rest of you who've joined us. We've got we've got Whitney, and the rest of you do stay on, because this is going to be fascinating. We're going to find out, and we're going to pick which of the memorials we think is most suitable. Over to you, Lamisha.
Amazing, so nice to meet you guys. I'm going to share my screen. Documents. All right, how do you
oh dear, we're going to have a problem, Garrett. Can you enable
Yes, I'm just
yeah,
trying to do that now.
do that
Just see.
control, haven't you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my God, what am I doing?
Our colleague Simon's not on screen at the moment.
No, it's not. Oh, it's not giving me the option, Liz.
Maybe Liz, could I email you and could you share the screen for this?
Yes, absolutely fine.
Yeah, do it that way, because the option is not here for me to allow you to share.
I wonder if it is. What did you look at, Garrett?
Yeah, I'm co-host, but on the menu it's not coming up.
Is it on the participants menu?
Yeah, that's the one. Yeah.
Or
excuse me, Garrett.
Garrett?
Yeah.
Can you not just let the lady be a co-host for this? Let her be the co-host, and she'll
that's what we're trying to do.
That's what we're trying to do, yeah. But
we can't.
It's not giving us the option, you see.
Liz, I've sent it to you anyway, so we can do it.
Yeah, if you send it to Liz, Liz could put it on, because I don't have the option.
We should do the introduction. I'll just switch my video off while I'm looking at my emails.
So hi guys, I'm Lamisha. As was mentioned, Liz, Natalie, and I did a project called In I Suit You around the social history of Jamaican patois, and we actually have one of our participants from last summer here. So that's really cool. But today I'm talking around this new memorial the Mayor of London has sort of commissioned around the experience of enslaved Africans, and will highlight London's role in the trade of enslaved Africans. I just want to start with a land acknowledgement to contextualize me and the impact of Britain on the world. So I am currently on Turtle Island, and this is the traditional territories of the Mississaugas of the Credit, the Anishinaabe, the Haudenosaunee, the Wendat, and the Chippewa people. And this is governed by Treaty 13 and the Wampum Belt Covenant, this Wampum Belt Covenant. And it's been destabilized because of the Great Britain, and I advocate for the return of sovereignty and the return of stewardship to all Indigenous people. So in March 2023, last year, the Mayor of London started to announce this new memorial. And in July, we held our first conversation with the Black Heritage Links. And now we're back for another conversation, but choosing these memorials. So we've got Turtle Island is I guess Canada and America, which we know today. But I'm based in Toronto right now. So this memorial will be a collaboration. Oh,
sorry, Lamisha, I've managed to get that ready for you now. So when you'd like me to show it.
Yeah, get up, please. Thank you.
And just to explain, because one or two folks might not realise that you're in Canada at the moment. Oh, yeah. All right. And in a moment, I'm also going to share the the short presentation we make at the beginning of every session. We've already done it once before you all joined us, but in the same way that you pay respect to the peoples of the land on which you are, if I'm in Australia, I pay respects to the people of the lands on which I am, the Wurundjeri people, when I'm over there. So it will be an opportunity to validate this approach of paying respect. Thank you very much for doing
100%.
that. Okay. Right, let's find this now. So first of all, we'll do your presentation, then we'll do our bit at the end. I think that might be a better way around.
So I'll read the spiel they've given me. So this memorial will be a collaboration between artists, educators, and communities to honor the sacrifice, contributions, and lives and afterlife of those trafficked during the transatlantic slave trade. This memorial will educate current and future generations of the resistance, defiance, and survival of enslaved Africans. It'll be a space to remember, reflect, and heal, and provide an opportunity for Londoners to explore the city's complex legacy and involvement in this dark chapter of our national and global history. The primary site for the memorial, so we can move to the primary site bit, so after the Venn diagram. Yeah, the primary site will be in West India Quay, outside the Museum of London, Docklands. And this will also be accompanied by satellite sites, smaller installations that link to the site, link this artwork across other memorials across London. But these locations haven't been determined yet. There will also be a learning program to accompany the memorial and improve public knowledge of this history. And then, so just last month, on the 6th of June, the Mayor of London announced 6 shortlisted proposals. The main way you can engage with these proposals is through the GLA website, but we're also going to go through here now. So I will speak it out, but you can also read it through.
Can I just say, Lamisha, this block here, which is the base of another statue, do you know what that was? Because I know that was one removed.
Yeah, what's his name? Robert Milligan. I believe it's the Robert Milligan one. But that was removed before they even started thinking about this memorial.
Right, well, that's really interesting. So here are the proposals then.
Right, so I'm gonna talk you through the proposals. You can look through them. Right now, I would also have a really good look. I'm gonna give you some 10 seconds, just see what's grabbing you just from aesthetic.
I'm just trying to make it bigger so people can see. This one, first of all. Having a good look at that. You can kind of look into it.
Try and get your first reactions.
That one. Difficult to see. It's like a long box. Right. This one. Big cowrie shell. This one. Interesting. It's huge. Right, so those are the 6 images that you presented.
Yes.
And can you, somewhere it describes each of them, doesn't it?
Yes, as we keep going with the slides. So I'm going to show you all the proposals, explain them, and then I'm going to ask you like 2 to 4 questions at the end to get your. So let's go to the first proposal. If you keep going down through the slides.
Sorry, you want to go? Oh, right.
Yeah, keep going.
I'm keeping going. Hang on a minute. Artists and artworks. This is what yes.
Okay, this is the first one. This is Alberta Whittle, Echoes from Beneath the Deep and In Between the Canes.
Oh.
Good name. Echoes from Beneath the Deep and In Between the Canes brings together visual cues from across the African diaspora. These include a Caribbean-style pavilion and a sculptural representation of a sugarcane field, carved wooden stools, a large cowrie shell sculpture. Juxtaposing sugarcane alongside London's Docklands former warehouse will create a strong visual connection with shared histories that echo beyond the Thames and reverberate across the Atlantic. This is tactile artwork designed for people to touch and take pleasure in its textures. It will embed a variety of materials and techniques. We will work with accessibility advisors to ensure that the work considers its audience and their varied needs. including people with mobility needs, families, the visually impaired, older people, and children. Community engagement is central to the evolution of the artwork. Whittle says of her work, "I am Barbadian, but my family made their home in London during the 60s. Family conversations nurture a commitment to reimagining freedoms in the wake of enslavement. In the Americas, the Caribbean, and the African continent, proof of transatlantic slavery resides in plantations, barracoons, and fields of sugarcane, tobacco, coca, and coffee. In Britain, the evidence has been disguised." Whittle's plan for the satellite states is they will produce installations consisting of the key elements from the key West Indian Key Memorial, and they'll also invite performers, musicians, and storytellers to bring their response, testimonies, and research to the artwork at key dates, such as the International Day of Elimination of Racial Discrimination, Windrush Day, International Slavery Remembrance Day. And she's also interested in including audio works throughout the creative workshops, and she'll make it available to audience to download and listen around installation in the satellite locations. So that's the first one.
So I could email this PowerPoint, could I, to people who are here today, so they could have a better look at it?
And it also should be on the website, like the information should be on the website that was sent around through that email you sent. But feel free to send this through so people can consume it at their own pace.
I'll collect up the emails at the end of the session.
Yes, amazing. So this is Grada Colomba, Archaeology of Contemplation. This proposal revisits the image of a boat as a metaphor of remembrance. Western imagery often associate boats with glory, adventure, freedom, and maritime expansion, an era of discovery. However, just as continents with millions of people cannot be discovered, neither can one of the most tragic periods of humanity be erased. The sculpture aims to foster a reflection around the Middle Passage.
Right. There we are, back on the picture now.
Oh yeah, I just saw the comment. Let me finish reading it and then I'll go to the comment. The Middle Passage was the brutal voyage of millions of enslaved Africans across the Atlantic into forced labor in the Caribbean and Americas. In horrendous conditions, people were transported as cargo by the British and other European nations. This sculpture carefully reveals the bottom of these boats, making visible the invisible. On the 11-meter long concrete and stone rectangle lies the archaeology of a boat, showing the cramped style that housed the bodies of trafficked Africans. A composition of 140 cast in black bronze surrounded 18 gold bronze pieces honoring the victims. The sculpture is engraved with a poem written by Colomba. Through workshops, the poem will be translated into 6 languages spoken by descendants, African diaspora communities across London. The plan for satellite states and engagement include a small-scale model of the monument situated at the Museum of London Dockyards. They also use the same approach for researching and translating the poem for the proposed with the primary sites, engaging the communities from the areas surrounding the venues. And they work closely with communities descended from formerly enslaved people, and they'll commission the language of the poem into their respective language, for example, Yoruba. In a gesture of warmth and recognition, these diasporic languages will be engraved across the sculpture along English. This will permanently weave the presence of global diaspora in London's contemporary public space. In this way, the London Memorial will honour the many ways diasporas have been impacted by the colonial enterprise and showcase the diverse population in London through their languages. And then let me go to the comment I saw. I do have a problem with it anymore. None of this is...
I'm afraid I'm struggling to find the comments.
Oh, I saw.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's best. I think it's best to deal with it at the end. Let's have the presentation. I'm just throwing out an idea. Don't worry. You know, let's do your presentation and then we'll talk. Okay.
And then we'll talk. Yes, amazing.
Yeah.
Okay. So next we've got Helen Cammock with Ripple. This artwork is a large-scale circular stone structure that creates a space to reflect and learn from the generational experiences of enslaved people. It's designed as a space you enter, discovering texts that speak to you as you move around. Ripple is a place to reflect and think, to discuss and connect. There is a middle central space with a bench containing a 5-meter stone column. The epicenter, outside the main memorial space, there are ripples, tail ends for people to sit and learn. Texts are engraved in the stone wall and inlaid with sapele, which is West African hardwood. This is how they speak of their work. A ripple crosses geographical and historical time. A ripple allows us to touch generational experiences, although what we can see, hear, and touch may be lessened as it expands over time, which requires greater attention. A ripple can move between past and present, carrying many voices and stories of survival and resistance. It bears witness, and so can we. And this is the plan for the satellite sites and engagement. So they want each stone to have text inlaid in the West African hardwood style. And some will be circular walls with a bench, others small columns. And each site is suggested for its historical relevance in nearby communities. These communities, as well as visitors to the main memorial and Museum of London Docklands, are invited to join a workshop program around ideas of freedom and what it means to have this curtailed. These workshops will have various activities focusing on creating poetic text for display in a bespoke cabinet at the museum. This rolling text work exhibition made by participants will in turn create a cross-London dialogue network as part of a citywide workshop program. And then we'll move on to our next piece.
Right, so there are all those comments.
Hugh Locke, Memorial to the Victims of Transatlantic Slavery. It's been estimated that up to a quarter of enslaved people transported across the Atlantic were children. Children born to slavery could be traded away from their own parents, and as they grew, their own children would be then enslaved and traded away in turn. This artwork consists of bronze sculptures of boys and girls processing together, wearing carnival or African influence masks. Some details will be picked out by burnishing or polishing so they appear gold. A drummer on the plinth summons us to the spot. One holds a small boat looking over towards the bronze ship of the Hibbert Gate opposite. The others each carry a small model building related to the slave-based economy. Just as saints in history were depicted carrying the cathedrals they built, so our children will be carrying the buildings, the fruits of their labors made possible. Their clothes are decorated with symbols and imageries, for example, the Adinkra symbol Sankofa, signifying learning from the past to inform the future. Striped decorations will also carry the names of Black Britons who deserve celebration, from historic figures like Mary Prince and Black Mary Wollaston to more contemporary artists like Frank Bowling and Benjamin Zephaniah. Locke says of the work, as well as the present, this memorial also needs to be about the present and the future. As well as the past, this memorial needs to be about the present and the future, and children signify the future. I want to engender a sense of pride in our survival. I want to work to be delicate but hard-hitting. Locke's plan for the satellite sites and engagement includes a low relief plaque of the drummer standing 1 meter high and fixed to a wall. The skin of his drum will also contain information about the site and also about the main memorial. And they also plan to consult local historians and academics for suggestions of appropriate buildings and institutions to incorporate into the work. They also reach out to experts in African symbols and histories, and they'll have a launching event which will attract users and press with a meet the artist element, where they'll walk around and talk about their work. So the next one is Caleb Brooks' The Wake. This artwork uses large-scale cowrie shell to represent the perseverance, prosperity, and beauty rooted in African and African diasporic heritage. At nearly 7 meters high, this bronze sculptural installation is designed to enter and pause within. There are 2 accessible entrances marked by bronze sugar loaf mold sculptures. These represent the sugar industry and its slave labor dependence. The ramp is engraved with new poems from the poet Yusra Daly Ward. Inside the walls lists enslaved people's names, as well as blank lists acknowledging those we cannot identify. Overall, the work is a remembrance vessel, where rest and refuge are possible, where we can listen to our hearts and experience a joy that allows grieving. This is how he speaks of his work. The intention behind the work is not to just remember individual stories and hopes, but also counteract the history of forgetting embedded in colonialism. In the Museum of London Docklands, there's a list of ships, captains, owners, destinations that participated in the slave trade, but no names of the enslaved individuals. Victims are often excluded from archives. Brooks' plan for satellite sites and engagement, satellite artwork will be fiberglass, human-sized cowrie shells. Each shell will measure about 1.7 tall, acting as a public seating for one person. The intention is to embed a notion of rest, creating functionality objects that add to the city's social landscape. Communities will also have the chance to decorate and design imagery for each shell, and the shells will connect to larger program via various artist-led workshops. And then our final official suggestion is Zach Ovey's Nana Boluko. There it is. This artwork is an 11-meter tall and richly decorated representation of the African queen, Nana Boluko. She is believed to be the mother of all deceased people and accompanies them during their journey to the land of the dead, preparing their souls to be born again. She's richly decorated. Viv and Adinkra symbols form her watery wave skirts and lower circular benches. African sculptures circle her waist, and above sit a ring of regal Oba Benin bronze, torso shrouded by upturned boats. A necklace of clenched fists, the iconic symbol of Africa's resistance, sits below a Mende mask facing both the future and the past. It is adorned by a filigree halo inscribed with protective symbols, built in steel with cast resin details. Nana Boluko's is internally lit, providing her with a glowing life force throughout the night. This is how they speak of the work. I use the medium masquerade, a celebratory ritual, to create a link between the past and the present in heralding African culture. I retrace diasporic lineage to honor the stolen traditions, faiths, and beliefs that were taken and dispersed, banned and denied by enslavers. There is no future without the past. To create a new future, it is imperative to remember who we are or who we were. This is our plans for the satellite sites and engagement. So they'll have satellite site markers that are single structures that act like weather vanes, and each will feature a set of arms on an elegant pole which will turn with the wind. The symbol and markers of the various arms echo the main sculpture through their symbolism and design. Through the vane arms turning the wind, they never give a true reference point, constantly turning back east, back to the Africa, and the journey of the diasporic to the west, to the past, and also to the future. This could also be a gateway for school children and communities to explore the references and heritage behind the memorial. Through workshops, children can use the various symbols as a starting point for creative exploration and discussion. For the general public, major new events could be created that celebrate leading Black cultural figures such as Claudia Jones, founder of Notting Hill Carnival, and reviving John LaRose's Black Book Fair literary event. Thank you all for listening to me. So I'm gonna start with some questions.
Right, I'm just stopping sharing.
Maybe you in the chat or shout out or put your hands up, or probably in the chat so we can all see. 1 to 6, let me know your favorite. And then if it's none, say 0.
You want to go back to that that one that's got all 6 on, so people can
Yes, please.
know what number they are. Okay, let me just do that again then. Somebody, where were we? This first one here. So which numbers do they go by? Is this number 1, 2?
No, it's not even the right order.
Right, tell me which order they go in.
1 is Echoes, but one is the sugarcane.
Is
One.
this
Yeah.
one with the cowrie shell and the sugarcane and the
2 is Ripple with the white things.
2 is Ripple.
3 is Hugh Locke's children with the masks and the drum.
This is the children with the mask and the drum. This is number 3. So we've got 1, 2, 3. Yeah.
The wake was the brown shell.
4. Excellent.
The next one was the Nana Baluku. So
Is
that
it
was
one?
that was the
Yeah. Or is this Nana Baluku with the Nana
oh
Baluku?
wait. Who was that one then? Okay, I think I messed one up. I think I missed one. Oh, Kimbora archaeology attempt of okay, I've done this wrong.
Archaeology is number 5. Then this is number 6.
I think you missed.
Please, okay. Can we also? I've done it wrong. Maybe because it's in the wrong order, it's going to be confusing. Can you also describe the one you liked, so I know definitely which one you're talking about?
So you could describe this one as
Shell.
shell. This
the
is
one is ripples.
ripples. This is
This one.
archaeology. This is children with gifts. This
Yeah.
is African goddess. And this is the sugarcane one.
Yeah.
Is that clear enough for everybody? So we know which we're saying. So can you, if you can manage, do it in.
Excuse me, did you just want us to write the one that we like, or like, how did you want us to do it?
Yeah, just in the comments, just write the one that you like the most.
Thank you very much.
And then I'm just gonna absorb it, and then we'll have a discussion from there.
Which one do you like best?
Yeah, Natalie and Liz, what do you think?
I'm worried about the ripple because it just looks like an invitation to put graffiti on it, which is perhaps a bit practical. The one that is the number 1 one that you said was a shell. What worried me about that, and bear in mind I have a chance to have a look at the website and consider these, is that I wondered how easy it would be to have a public statue that's got a hidden inside. Now this is based on another public statue that I know that had a hidden inside, and the hidden inside was always full of rubbish and nasties. So that worries me about that one. I quite like the sugar cane. It's got potential.
I'm not too sure what I'm looking at for the sugarcane though. Like, I'm not sure what's.
I like the one with the kids.
Not the one with the kids. Natalie likes the one with the children bringing their gifts, and that
I
would
like
really
sugarcane
make
too.
people think.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, now that everyone has spoken to it, I'm gonna start with Joan. So yeah, why 0? Why none of them?
I'm just not feeling this. I just think, do we really need a memorial? Why do we keep having this stuff sort of put in our faces? I'm just not persuaded. The man wants to spend 100 grand. Okay, let him spend 100 grand. But to me, it's pointless. I don't just, obviously outside the Museum of Slavery, Museum of the Doctors, whatever, kind of makes some sense. But I just think it's all just part of this sort of left-wing kind of EDI, diversity, blah blah blah. It'll all be in 5 years' time. This will all be forgotten. It's just now, while this woke thing is having its moment. But in 5 years, it will all be forgotten.
And I guess aesthetically, you weren't bothered by any of them.
None of them particular. If I was, to me, I would just have a memorial. Like, I don't know how many. Is it like 12 million people were taken from Africa? I should know the number, but a huge number. I would just literally have 12 million souls taken from Africa to the Caribbean and be done with it. But I personally think, frankly, it's BS. But that's my personal view.
Okay, from that response, I just want to throw in, I agree to it looks exploitative and con. You know what? We had a similar conversations last time, and when we spoke last year, people weren't sure why the mayor was doing it, especially when there have been memorials, like people have been trying to get memorials up. So this was something that came up. I just dropped something in the chat where there was this artist called Oku who made a memorial for transatlantic slavery, and Boris Johnson was just refusing to get it installed and stuff like that. And I brought it up again when I gave my feedback last year. They didn't really address it, so I think we should talk about it again, to think about what work has already been done and why are they ignoring it. Let's go to Garrett.
I had a look at the one that sort of make a bit of sense to me is about the children, Hugh Lockie. And in relation to memorial, I mean, it's not just a visible thing, it's about the historical side. It's about the legacy and, you know, continue generation when we pass the children, their children, their children, it will be there. So I think that one does have some strong significance in terms of representation. And I'm thinking that you mentioned satellites, you know, different places. So I'm thinking that, you know, in Lambeth, for example, you know, in Windrush Square by the Black Archives, maybe something there. But, you know, the context and the information, I think, is important. The symbol is good, but I think it's also need to capture, you know, the text need to capture and convey the emotions and, you know, the story in very concise language.
I hear you. That's a bit. I wonder if any of my blems want to speak. Freya?
Yeah, I would say that I mean, I've said first glance aesthetically what interested me was the shell one, and that was literally just first thought. Like I think the thing is with all of these, it's so hard to convey in a statue years and of struggle, and also I mean, before also joining this, I can't lie, being one of the younger voices, I was low-key like, I said it to my mom, I was like, is it right for me to join being a younger voice in terms of, it feels so, so long ago. But that, yeah, it's so hard for something that, there's not enough, we're not taught enough about and stuff in schools to be able to represent that in one statue or whatever. I think it's an interesting idea, but it's hard to represent however many 12 million, I think someone mentioned earlier, people struggle over so many years, with so many people involved as well in just one statue. Yeah.
And I think it's interesting how they say the education elements are workshops when quite literally the government make the education course, like make a really distinct and really like well-informed education course. Like, because I know lots of people want to make this history like well known, and it's all, when it comes to education and knowing stuff, it's literally who taught you it, like, or at the end of the day. The thing I did like about the shell thing was how practical it was. Like, you could use it as a seat as well. So I thought like maybe people just sit in it and then realize and then start looking at the side and start seeing the names, and then that might be poignant. I'll go back to Garrett for his response.
Just listening to what's been said by a younger person, and Liz and I, one of the things that we always emphasize, the difference between England and Wales in terms of Black history. So in Wales, it is mandatory for schools, yet in England, it isn't. So just picking up that comment, maybe that is where England should be heading in terms of the school and the curriculum. So, you know, the memorial is wonderful, great to have something, but you know, we need to address the educational aspect, particularly, you know, for the young people in schools. If England can actually move in that direction as mandatory like Wales, then thumbs up.
Definitely. All right, let me move. Whitney.
Hello.
Hello.
Sorry. In terms, is this a question in terms of my favorite one?
Yeah, your favorite one.
So I picked number 6, which is like the colorful one, the Nana Buku one.
Yeah.
I actually quite enjoyed that one, as well as the picture that's next to it with the children. I think there's an extra element in terms of decolonizing our experiences of like being part of the African/Caribbean diaspora. Because there's one thing about acknowledging that you are the minority of a white dominated country, but there's another thing of acknowledging the spirituality side of it, the history, the religions that we originally came from. Sorry, hey, but acknowledging that side of it, in a sense of like a lot of the things that, I mean, the practices that we had were very much demonized, and it's still demonized to this day. Nowadays you still have like arguments on TikTok where people are like, should you wash your meat or not? And those are like, even though it might seem as a very small example, but something that growing up in a very African or Caribbean household, washing your meat is like pretty much a necessity before you start cooking your meals. And that stems from our own heritage. When we like, if you think back, like I'm not too sure of like how close everyone else here is in terms of if they're second generation or first generation, but I'm a first generation African. So like my parents grew up in Africa. They grew up in a climate where like they couldn't just have store-bought chicken like here. They had to clean it to make sure that it's properly like well done on that stuff so that we can consume it. So that's the reason why I kind of like the Nana Buku one, because it speaks back to us that yes, we were brought into this country via slavery, via Windrush, via even as form of military as well. Even though we are brought here in different sort of circumstances, we shouldn't be like, I guess, demonized or stripped from our own spiritual side.
I was just thinking about that the other day, like especially in Toronto, like it's 100 years of tarmac, 300 years of like horse shit, and like 100,000 years of like stewardship. Like actually, like that period of history is actually crickets. Like our understanding of history really jumps from 1600s. So yeah, I resonate with that. Is any other comments? Please jump in.
Sorry, just to bounce off what you said as well. It's like, because I think a lot of this is like grievance of loss, is grievance of like, but it's kind of like at the same time, who are we grieving? Like, who were we as people? Because it feels much more like we're grieving the labor of Black people instead of grieving who they are as people, who like their history is, their culture, the like, you know, the aesthetic sort of vibe.
David, go in.
Yeah, I think just as, I guess, a touch point onto just a thought that I've been having, which has kind of been disturbing me in a sense, and it's the fact that I feel like this is heavily
David,
sorry?
you're Black Heritage Links.
Sorry?
Oh, I didn't realize you do Black Heritage Links.
No, you mean YHP. I'm not from YHP.
Oh, you're here from YHP. Oh, sweet.
Yeah. Yeah, for me there's a tokenized element in terms of, like, I kind of always feel like there's always sort of this is our histories are viewed as some sort of intellectual project and not necessarily about honoring our ancestors, our communities, our resistance, our spirituality. And I feel like today as well, in terms of today's context, like for example, you think of Hurricane Beryl and the damage and destruction that's happened towards within the Caribbean nations. And I'm pretty sure, and it was done by David Lammy, which I have loads of problems with. I'm sure there's loads of people that have problems with David Lammy. But only £500,000 was raised for Caribbean communities. And I find that actually very distasteful, along with other political favoritisms that's going on, particularly by the particular nations, like Ukraine, for example. And I just kind of feel like there's a context there of this kind of trivializing and kind of like, this is all that we get sort of vibe. And I feel like there needs to be a conversation of that and a realization of what is the intention of politicians and people like the Mayor of London are. What are they there to do? Like, what is this that they're trying to do within communities in terms of is this something that is about caring, or is it exploitative, like how I kind of feel? And I've kind of got this sort of vibe. It's an exploitative vibe, particularly like the Windrush line and stuff like that. I've kind of got this vibe about how he's doing things and how he's approaching things. He's very tokenistic. And this is within the same context you having the scandal, right? And it's just, I don't know, there's lots of vibes that I just feel very off about. Definitely.
And because I totally, like, I have to watch what I'm being recorded, but like, honestly, the fact that that statue, that Oku statue has been made maybe 20 years ago, loads of public campaigns, like in the BBC, in the public, like publications, like it's well known, and you can't tell me along this journey and doing the consultation, especially because I've said it to them, that this was never considered. Like, fair enough, but yeah, it is. I don't know. I just feel like we're getting to a point of consciousness where we realize we're being exploited. Like all these systems of being, of ways, are just made up from the 1600s for capitalist reasons to exploit us from the bone. But at least we get a nice little statue. Yeah, like at least we get a nice artwork. And I guess the thing about a statue is that it will be there until someone chucks it into the sea, chucks it into the river. And I guess, like, but when I think of memorials that have done it well, but I think about, I have been so well informed to understand the memorial. So when I've been to Berlin, I see the Holocaust memorials. I know the Holocaust so well that I can evoke the power of the memorial evokes through me. Like, and I understand the different memorials. I understand what happened to the LGBT people, so I understand why that memorial is so powerful. I understand what happened to Romani people, so I understand why that body of water is so powerful. I don't think people really knows what actually happened to the enslaved people on a deeply, like, disgusting level. Like, and people don't want to really think too hard about it. But I don't want to speak too much because I really want to hear from everyone else. But yeah, Canada, like, that's what, and I feel like I've been super, like, politicized since living in Toronto, is that it is just, like I said it before, 100 years of tarmac, 300 years of horseshit, and 100,000 years of actual stewardship. And 400 years isn't a lot to think about. That's what's been lost in that time. I'm keen to hear from my other blams who've made it down here. Please speak.
Okay, so I'll stop sharing for a minute and then we can to see who's joined us in the in-between time. So this is Black History Conversations, and you're quite right to say that Lamisha, that we're recording this. We've just had an interesting session where we've been looking at some research shared by Dr. Daye from Northampton, but now we're looking at this, so it's good. So is there anybody else we've got? Okay, Joan's asking a question. I can get into the
Holocaust. Oh, the Holocaust, the actual Holocaust. LGBT people were killed during that. Yes, my love. Hand up.
In minute numbers, though, it's not hundreds of thousands. It's just relatively a few. It's handfuls.
Yeah, but I just think it's the
handfuls. It was
semantics
not,
of the
and
word
that's
Holocaust. We know they died.
these things. I mean, what is bringing all these things together? I mean, what's it all? There's something going on. There's something weird going on.
Yeah. Wait, Nene, do you want to go? I think did I say it right?
No, it's fine. My name's Ine. It's okay,
Ine.
don't worry. Yeah, I think all the proposals are actually quite cool, and they're all unique in their own sense. The reason why I thought that the wake one, the shell, was like most interesting to me because visually it actually stands out the most. And I was like reading through the documents that you sent, and how there's going to be like poetry within the shells as well. So I think that kind of adds like an extra element to it. But do we know what poems are going to be like written? Like, is that been shared?
So this was the wake. So they want to use a poet called Yusra Daly Ward. Let me try and get some of their poetry up. But
Okay.
Freya, you can go whilst I'm finding that.
Thanks. I couldn't work out how to put the like hand thing on. So sorry. But yeah, so I was gonna say that first of all, like in terms of with the what the money could also be spent on, I feel like it's just I wanted to mention like so obviously I'm Guyanese and our archives back in Georgetown are like in a massive mess, and it's actually I feel like for mainly it's really hard for me with the slavery, and it's definitely not like a unique experience to not actually be able to know the names of our ancestors. And in a way, I'd like to know that more than to have a memorial up. That would be more important so that I can be able to know their story for myself, but then also to share it and have that personalized feel to it. I think there's been some Holocaust memorials which have been able to show the humanity behind it more than it just being a statue. But then also I was kind of wanting to think on the part of why like the children's one is so important. Garrick said about like how in Wales and England we're not, I think it can also have like so many meanings as well with it in terms of being children of Black heritage in this country compared to our ancestors who were literally taken from Africa to the Caribbean as children. We've now got as children that we don't even know their stories. So I think that tells a really poignant story, which would be great to show if there is going to be this memorial.
And I put the poet person in. Does that impact like how you would engage with the piece?
No, I was just interested just because I feel like if like I notice a lot of them have like writing written on, and if you want people to actually engage, I feel like, how do I frame it, like what's written on the memorials kind of has to be like something that people can relate to, because I think what was like touched upon before is just like I find it really interesting. Someone mentioned about like why now, like why are they doing this now, like what's the like not in a way like what's the relevance, but like how do you make this how do I say, like relatable to everyone, especially younger people, because like what was said in England it's not compulsory, so it's just like trying to like bridge that gap, if that makes sense. I'm not entirely sure. Yeah, do you understand what I mean?
I do get what you mean, because it feels like this is one step before, like you can't start making art when you don't understand the context.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
Like my little sister, like she doesn't get taught about slave trade, and it's like crazy to me. And I'm just like, why are we doing like all these installations? It comes across really performative. And like someone said before, like in 5 years' time, even though it's a bit like sinister, but like it's probably true. Like it's just like, yeah, it's booming right now, but then it's gonna be like
Mm.
at the back of people's minds unless you actually care about it. But it's like making people actually understand why. So I think the poetry, the stuff that's written on there can be like captivating and people can relate to it and then understand why we have this memorials. I think that's important. Yeah.
Hi, this is Jackie. Hi, just wanted to say hi there. I just wanted to comment on the wake. That's the one that, as you know, it is visually attractive, but I think it's also spiritual. I think you're entering into a sacred space. You're surrounded by the names of your ancestors, those who have come before you. There's some blank spaces for the gaps that are not there. Coming out of it, you're coming out with a little more knowledge than you had before. I think it's a great symbol because, you know, sometimes when you look to something, maybe it's not telling the whole story, but what it's doing is putting your attention on that. And I see that symbol as being replicated in these satellite states places, or even replicated on educational information about this subject. So I really think it's like entering into a space, getting knowledge, and coming out with, you know, this added knowledge of what you've acquired in there. And I think that it's kind of welcoming to everyone. You know, nobody's going to feel, you know, what am I getting into here? You know, it's welcoming to all people. So I like the show.
Amazing. I'll go to Garrick, and then I would love to hear from anyone who hasn't spoken as well.
Just listening to the various comments, and there seems to be a sort of consensus around the whole educational aspect that, you know, is really missing around the curriculum. And I'm just wondering, because 100,000, is that the figure allocated for the memorial?
How much it's costing?
Yeah.
I bet it's way more. You think about all the consultants they need to get in and stuff
Well,
like that.
okay, all right. Let's just use that figure.
Yeah.
What could that do with the curriculum?
Exactly.
Right? And I'm just wondering about, you know, the educational specialists, you know, like the teachers union and other people, etc., that represent that curriculum body. You know, have they had the opportunity to actually feed into this at all? And I think, you know, there's something to be said about that. You know, because, you know, maybe the memorial could come 5 years later down the road, for example. Let's just tackle the curriculum now and leave that for a bit later.
Because I know, like, when I was part of the Young Historians Project, there was like real ambition to do like a course for the curriculum. You just need to pay someone to make a course. We were volunteers. We would have done it for free. You know what I mean?
We got somebody here. We got Liz here, you see. So we got somebody here that could actually do it.
Yeah. Liz, you want to go?
Okay, my go. Well, greetings everybody, and it's lovely that we're joined by some of your folks who are still in London, unlike yourself, I think. So yeah, I just wanted to come back, Freya. You made a really good point, I think, and it's a point that was raised when we started looking into the records of the Pennant family who had 6 plantations in Jamaica. Those records are held in Bangor University. Some of them are available online now, and we were sharing the online ones with a group that we work with in Jamaica who are actually based in the village of Pennants. So they're called the Pennants Heritage Research Group. And one of the things that is so noticeable about the record keeping is the lists and lists of the enslaved people, which the British authorities required plantation owners to submit every 6 months, I think. So you've actually got all the names of the enslaved people listed one after the other after the other. And we had a speaker on Black History Conversations from a university in the States. And she has worked on the names of the enslaved people on the Rose Hall estate in Jamaica. So we decided that we would look at the possibilities, and we're going to start a project. This is Learning Links International with our colleagues in North Wales and with our colleagues in Jamaica, called Fiwi Life, Fiwi Story, and translates to Our Lives, Our Stories. So Freya, it's a great idea, and you can actually check out on these plantation records who the people were. And Professor Celia Naylor has also gone further into identifying what could be found out about each individual, and written a little pen picture. So I think it's called Untold Stories. I just need to research and find it. It's a wonderful website, and you look up those stories. So I think that was the main thing I was going to say. Garrick, there was going to be something else that came in that you said, about the course. In North Wales, well, in Wales, the Welsh Government has provided funding for exchange visits with other countries, I was explaining earlier, and we've been fortunate enough to get that under the adult education strand. And in order to do that, we have to run a course. So we are now, well, we've written the course and done some pilot sessions, and it's called Building Bridges, Understanding the Shared History of Wales and Jamaica. Now, I know Wales is Wales and it's not England, but it's important to recognise that all the countries in the United Kingdom were involved in the slave trade. And so that's why we're particularly focusing on that. And to look at it as an online course, maybe on Future Learn or something like that as time goes by. But Future Learn has got a Black History online course. And there are loads of great books. David Olusoga's book for adults as well as for children. Atinuka's brilliant book for young people and children on brilliant Black British history. That is just amazing. So there's lots of information out there for people to find out. That's all I was going to say. Okay, over to you again, Lamesha.
Yeah, I just wanted to hear from, is Alicia here? I just want to hear from everyone who hasn't spoken or who was Black. And then I'm gonna write my report, send it out, and anything you definitely want the Greater London Authority to know.
Can you hear me?
A wee bit.
I don't know what.
Maybe you can type if you can't hear you properly.
Sorry. All right. Oh. I'm gonna type because I don't know.
Oh wait, I can hear you. I can hear you really well.
Oh. I don't know why my camera's not on as well. I'm not sure what's happening. But no, I just wanted to say, like, with regards to the sculptures, the ripples one resonated with me. Like I take on board everything that everyone said, and it's like it makes sense. But aesthetically, for me, like my style is very minimalistic as well, and I feel like because of, you know, like when you talk about the transatlantic journey and like all of our ancestors that we've lost in the ocean and whatnot, and so like that spoke to me with the whole rippling effect. Like our ancestors are still around us, traveling with us, like it's still a part of it. And then with the inscriptions that would be written on the curves, yeah, I just think that would be impactful and lasting, even if it is kind of tokenistic at this point. It's still going to be there, and you know, you're either going to receive it or you're not. And it's there and you can go and build on that if you choose to. And, you know, I don't know. That's my take on it. And like with regards to the education, like the education system is what it is. But my daughter, who's 7, she is constantly coming home and talking about the Black women in history that she learns about, like outside of Black History Month. And we've got literature at home also that she can refer back to anyhow. But from school, she's still talking about like more than Harriet Tubman. And like it's just, I don't know, I think it just comes down to the institution that they're at. But I appreciate what she's being taught at the moment. And so I could go on about how biased the system is, but I also see the changes that are being made currently as well. So I can't knock it that much. I mean, like as much as I would want to, you know. But yeah.
Thank you, Alicia.
No
And
worries.
let's go to Dr. Daye. Dr. Daye.
Thank you very much, Lamisha, for this. It's interesting. I think what resonated with me is the one with representing the slave ship, even though I think I don't like how they did it, because it seemed like it's more this heavy concrete base that seemed to eclipse perhaps what's the real focus for me, which is the kind of reproduction of the slave ship. And for me, that one, I think, would have some meaning for me, even though, as I said, perhaps aesthetically, it's not that it's because it's stark. It just seemed to just be more about the base of the structure than the actual shape. And in my mind, it's always been intriguing for me, the notion of the transportation of all these millions of people in the ship. It's always been, it's a Holocaust that we don't refer to. It's the transatlantic Holocaust. We don't use that term readily, but that is what it was, no less. And I think for me that's important. But when I think about that in terms of the forced removal against their will, and if somehow I do this kind of bizarre juxtaposition with what we're seeing now with the small boats coming to the UK, it's another movement of people that is involuntary, but just to see how over the centuries, socioeconomic factors have sort of been overturned, whereby we had a period in history where we were forcibly removing people to go to another part of the world. And now I think consequence, perhaps not in all cases, to that kind of thing, we're seeing a other sort of movement with diasporic movement, and just the awful kind of invocation of death at sea. I think that's what I'm making the links with. So don't know if that's helpful, but that for me would be my preference.
Yeah, like when I really think about slavery, I think about like the pack slave on the slave ship, where they're like, I don't know if it was real, but when they're all rowing and it's just packed with them. I feel like if something like that would make people uncomfortable in a public space for sure. But I feel like the memorial should do more. A memorial should either make the white people really uncomfortable or make us feel really like represented. Natalie Natalie.
I chose, not that any of them really reached me where I wanted to, but I thought of the ones presented, the one with the children would be more of an impact. Number one was the one when I was looking at it, I thought, what the heck is that? And secondly, I think with the buildings that were were related to the slave trade. The children holding these buildings will also show the impact that white British is still being impacted by the things that slavery gave, the buildings, the things. So it not just says, okay, it's us alone, this is our represent, but it also says, yes, but in our hands, we carried you with these things, with the Lloyd's Bank, with one of the buildings, possibly, buildings like that would show you that all the things that made Britain, in our hands, we carried you. And that's how I saw it. I read it like that. I didn't know whether or not that was what the artist's intent is, but for me, that was how I felt, and it made me feel something. It made me feel something because I thought it looked hella weird. And my first instinct was not to like it, which is what a memorial should do, I think. It should provoke thought, whether negative or positive, but it should provoke thought. And I think for what it is, for me, it provokes the most thought.
Thank you for sharing. Yeah, I think they're very interesting 6 selections. I wonder how well versed the artists are in Black history, because from their explanation of the engagement, it was like, oh, I'll find a historian to do this. I was like, you got to do the work yourself. You got to understand the context of your own work as well. But I'm definitely feeling that. But thank you all for giving me your thoughts, being honest, taking up the space here. And this is happening all across London, across the world, it seems. And the announcement of the proposal will be made on the 23rd of August. I'll have your email, so I'll make sure you're stayed in the loop. And if you have any additional comments or questions, stuff you really want the GLA to know, let me know. And then also, if you want to speak directly to the GLA, I'll drop their email and you can also feedback there.
Okay, well, thank you so much. And I hope we hosted this appropriately. Thank you very much, and it's delightful to be in touch with you all again, and it was good to work with some of you last summer as well on your project. So this is Black History Conversations, and one of the things that Jackie Pennant, who I think is still online with us from Florida, are you there, Jackie?
Yeah, I'm here, Liz.
Yeah, Jackie, I wondered if you'd like to read this, because this was your concept that we also included an acknowledgement on behalf of Black History Conversations. Would you like to do that?
Okay, yeah. Okay. Black History Conversations acknowledges the injustices of the actions taken by the British and the other European countries that invaded and took possession of the islands in the Caribbean Sea, as well as the continents of North and South America. In addition, we also recognize the exploitation of the great continents of Africa, Asia, Australia, and many other parts of the world in the centuries of colonization and ongoing exploitation. We acknowledge that this resulted in the destruction and destabilization of so many nations, peoples, and cultures.
Thank you very much indeed. Thank you. And as I said, this is our regular acknowledgement, in the same way, Lemesha, as you spoke about your acknowledgement when you started your session. It's respect for the countries and land that we're on, and recognition of our history, sincere recognition. So thank you very much, everyone. Anything else you want to say, Lemesha?
I've just, because this is slightly funded by the Great London Authority, if you need an internet bill, phone bill bursary, I'm sending over 25 Great British pounds to people. And I'm also sending out snap boxes. So if you email me and send me your address, I'll send you a nice little snap box.
Oh. Right, well, that's an offer. We don't usually have that offer on Black History Conversations. So thanks ever so much. It's great to have had Garrick here as well, Garrick Prayog. It's great that we've had June Elizabeth White-Smith Gully was here earlier, and Jackie Pennant, my colleague here, Natalie Fagan-Brown. It's good that we were able to help you to host this, Lemesha, and we're really delighted anytime. Okay then, bye for everybody. And Gary.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Bye,
Okay.
thank you.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Or
Lovely to
nice.
see you all.
Right, thanks so much. Cheers. Bye.
Bye then. How are you doing, Garrick? Okay. I got here just in time.
You,
All
you
right,
got
thanks
it.
ever so much to you as well. That's just brilliant, brilliant, brilliant.
Excellent, excellent. Okay, well, enjoy the rest of your day, and I know you're looking forward for your party tomorrow. I will be having a summer event here. I should be setting up at 8 o'clock in the morning. We finish at 6.
Looking at where you are with the sea rolling in behind you, I'm sure.
Yes.
Yeah, but next week I'll be back up in Wales, and
Yes, yes. So I'm coming over to Conway for that 23rd. Yeah.
I'll have a chat with you later on. Okay.
Okay. All right. Take care. All right. Bye-bye now.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. Why isn't he